Hello, everyone, and welcome on my presentation today. As you heard a moment ago, it was in Polish though, but as you could hear a moment ago, the inspiration for this presentation came up from the real experiment that I have performed with my team in my organization. But before I go into the presentation, I have a very important announcement. Please go to Slido and enter this code on Slido, because I will use this to communicate with you instantly 3 times in my presentation, right? So whenever I will come to the slide when I will need Slido, then you will see on the application open pool where you can vote, and a cloud of words will start to appear, and this will help me a little bit to communicate with you and also visualize what I want to say in a moment. Second disclaimer, usually I speak very fast. I try to fight with it and slow down to make my message more clear. But obviously, I might start speaking too fast, so you can also communicate that on the chat. I have chat over there, so I can see it, and then I will try to slow down. So let's go to our presentation with the first slide. And as I said, even on the first slide, I have a question to you guys. What is this? So what you can see on the screen, and right now I'm opening on Slido the first pool, right? So you should start seeing the on your screen on your phone a pool with a question. What is this? So what you can see on the picture. And obviously, I'm not asking for what is there after you connect the dots, right? But what is this, right? The thing that you can see on the picture. And you can start typing right now, right? I know that there is a slight delay between what I say and what you hear on the Hopin, but I believe and I hope that you already are in the application and are able to enter what you can see on the screen. This is something that probably most of you have seen in your life, maybe even played a little bit with it. So do we have anybody that would connect the dot puzzle? Great. So already I can see the first answer, and it's the one that I was expecting. So this is exactly this thing. So this is the connect the dots puzzle. And yeah, and second answer also with the same. So if you want to see what is on the puzzle, I promise you I will show you that on the last slide. And if you are wondering why I'm asking question about connect the dots puzzle in my presentation, you will also figure that out on my way during the presentation. But before I go to my presentation, I need to underline 2 things that are needed to solve puzzle like that. These 2 things are, firstly, the dots. So you have to have number of dots in correct order, right? And secondly, a pen to connect the dots, right? So the pen is like a procedure for connecting the dots, and the dots are the resources, so different kind of resources that you are able to connect in a particular way. And you will find it out why I'm talking about this in a moment, because before that, let me introduce myself. I'm Adam, and as you could hear a moment ago, I'm also a host of a podcast, 4Dev Midcast. It's a midcast for people in IT. Right now, I focus mainly on experts from the testing community. So that's the main experts that I invited to my meetup. But I would like to extend it to more broader audience with just the IT software development and so on and so on. Besides that, because that I do outside of my office hours. So during my office hours, right now I'm a test manager and test architect at Demand. This is a medical device software company. So it develops a medical devices, hearing aids, application that connect with the hearing aids, and so on and so forth. And that's my main job right now. That's my main thing on what I focus. You also have on the screen ways to communicate and contact with me, right? So let's jump to the story which I would like to share with you. Today's presentation, this presentation, I think will be a little bit different than the other presentations. I will not share with you too much. I will not share you at all any code. I'm not a coder. I'm a tester. I focus on how to test in a agile way, how to test in a way that is efficient for the project. So let's start with the story. So once upon a time, in a far away land near the Rondo ONZ in Warsaw, there was a project and a company that was living in two concurrent worlds, two worlds that were living in parallel. One world was world of agility, of empowerment, of developing software using agile methodologies like Scrum or Kanban and agile frameworks, right? And the other world was world of different kind of regulations, because the things that you were delivering, they could potentially harm the end user. So you had a lot of regulations that you had to be compliant with. And in this organization, when the teams were delivering projects, they were like two phases. And first phase was the phase of development, which was lead in the agile way. And the second phase was the system verification. And constantly from release to release, we were thinking about how to make the second phase more smooth, how to shorten it. And obviously, to make a shorter the verification phase, you have to have a smooth phase where you don't have too many defects, because when you're reporting defects, you're not testing, you're not executing test cases, because in formal verification, you basically execute test cases, right? So when you're executing them and you're doing it manually, then you're and instead of doing that, you have to report defects, then you're wasting your time. And also, additionally, with each release, during the system verification, we always open some new thing that, okay, why we find this huge defect right now, why we didn't find it earlier? And the answer usually was because we didn't check that functionality for quite a long time. The obvious answer how to make it faster is to automate stuff, right? To automate these tests, but automation takes time. Right, you have to hire the right person. You have to build a farm of devices, especially if the thing that you're developing is a medical device that is connected to a mobile phone. Then it's not like tests that you can write on your computer and simulate somehow. You have to use the physical devices to perform these tests, and that's one of the regulations that you have to comply with. So that takes time, and we hired automation team, and that their mission was to automate stuff for the future. But we had to figure out the solution right now, what to do right now. And on one of the retrospectives, we concluded like 26 action points for the next release, 26 things that we wanted to do. And a few of these action points tackled that we need to more exploratory tests. We need more exploration, right? We need to not only test stories, that we have a story, we take it to the sprint, we test it inside the sprint, but we need more freedom, right? More free exploration of different features. And at the same time, we need to be, we need to somehow direct the direction in which we want to go. And the first quick solution for the exploration, and at the same time ensuring that we test every feature in each sprint, was Excel. Excel, which is actually a great tool for documenting stuff if you don't have too much complexity in your project. And the Excel had a pretty simple structure. So we had in the columns features, different kinds of the features. So sum of all columns had summed up to the whole application, whole scope of the application. And in the rows, we had test iterations divided to different tests, assigned to different testers, right? So in one iteration, there could be more than one tester testing. And the testers, when they were testing these features, they didn't have like a test scenario. They had only information, okay, in this feature one is like a reporting tool. Feature two is like, I don't know, sign in functionality. Feature three is something connected with the backend, right? So the application was divided to these different features, and testers were testing these features. There could be several potential states. So state 1, the feature passed. State 2, the feature is not developed yet. This is the feature under development. There could be a state that we skip that feature. So overall, in the one iteration of these tests, tester didn't have to test all the features. As much time he had in the sprint and the freedom he had, so many features he had to test, right? And as you can see, there could be a different outcomes, right, from these iterations. The feature could fail because there could be some defects related to that. And for a time being, we are quite happy with the solution, because firstly, we went from the beginning to the application to the end of the application in either every sprint, or at least every now and then we could see that we are missing something. We didn't test something. And at the same time, the testers had a little bit of freedom, right? When they tested the feature, they could test it in any way they wanted to, right? So it's not executing test cases when you're doing step after step. You're just saying, click on that feature, test it, it's yours, right? As you can imagine, that also have some downsides, right? One of the downside was the still limiting the tester empowerment, right? Because the decision about what to test in the next iteration was not like a conscious decision that, okay, in the next iteration, we should focus on the feature 2 because yada, 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 right? No, we have to test everything. You can skip a feature if you don't have time, but it's mostly going through the whole row in every iteration, doing as many features as possible. So that's a one thing, right? It's not like targeted testing. It's not that this testing here is somehow that we are trying to maximize the value of that testing, right? Because everything is tested in every iteration. And secondly, this kind of testing, this kind of tool don't bring too much guidance to our junior testers, to people that are new in the project, right? Because obviously they can just take the application and click around it, but if they don't have enough experience, they might do it quickly, skipping some features maybe, or skipping some functionalities in that feature, right? Because they don't have too much guidance about what they should look for in the application. So it was a good tool for regression, but not the best tool for exploration. So what was our second decision? The second decision on the next retrospective was, okay, let's do an experiment. Let's trigger a set of exploratory tests. So let's book in every sprint on Wednesday. Let's book 2.5 hours in our calendars, right? Like other ceremonies in our calendars, right? Every 2 weeks, 2.5 hours. And on every workshop, on every session like that, all of us testers will close in a room, right? We are not available to the development team. We are not available to anybody for these 2.5 hours. We take one tool for testing, for exploratory testing. We learn that tool and we use it for these 2.5 hours, right? Well, usually the first half hour was learning the tool and then 2 hours of testing. That was the basic assumption. And let's do it for some period of time to check if it's worth spending that time, if we feel that it gives us some value, if we find some defects, and so on and so forth, right? Let's try it. Let's try it for ourselves, and then inspect and adapt and adjust to the way we perform these tests. So that's what we planned. But first, before triggering this experiment, we of course had to prepare our workshop for ourselves. We were quite experienced testers, but at the same time, we didn't have like too much experience in exploratory tests. And what does it mean? So I have read a little bit. I have prepared an initial workshop for the first session, and I would like to share with you like a snippet from that first initial workshop, how it looked like, and on what I focused before triggering the whole experiment. So first workshop was half-a-day workshop, and on the first part we were focusing on the creativity and what creativity is. And now you can go to your pool and you will see another question on which you can vote on, and the second question is, what is creativity? So now on your phones you can punch in what do you think, what words comes to your minds when you think about creativity, right? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about creativity? Or what kind of solutions do you think that are creative? So punch it in your applications. It can be on phone, it can be on your computer, and we should see in a moment a cloud of words showing on the screen on what creativity is. So go ahead. I know that you can see it right now. So try to punch in your answers. What do you think? What creativity is? Okay. So I will give you a little bit guidance on what answers I typically see. Ideas. Okay. So I can see ideas, and that's a kind of connected. So creativity very often is connected with new ideas. Another word I would expect on the pool would be new. All right, that's very often connected with creativity, and usually that's the art of. Oh, okay, that's a good one. An art of thinking wide. So thinking, not focusing on one thing, but thinking about the whole spectrum of something. And there is something in that solution. So before I jump into the official definition of creativity, I would again ask just a hypothetical question. Do you know with what invention this plant that you can see on the screen is connected with, right? And if not, okay, I forgot about this one. If not, then in a moment we'll get back to that, because the official definition of creativity, which I found on Wikipedia, is that creativity is a phenomenon whereby something new and somehow valuable is formed. And both of these bold words on that slide are very important here, because firstly, when you're creating something creative, it must be something new, something you didn't see in the past, right? Something that that is like created as a new thing. And secondly, it must bring some value, and that's a very important part of creativity, because I don't know, put a banana on the wall and somebody can say, what's creative about that, right? But in some art gallery in United States, when a guy have put a banana on the wall, he actually was awarded as, oh, that's a piece of art. That's great, because it brings some value to somebody. If somebody would do that in my apartment, I would say, you're devastating my walls, right? But in the art gallery, it brings value to somebody, right? So both of these parts of the definition are important in the creativity, but at the same time, I'm missing something in that definition, because from one perspective, it is something new, but in other perspective, creativity is not always something completely new. Well, actually, creativity usually is creating something from other things that already exist, building on the existing knowledge. And that's why I was asking to you, do you recognize the plant that you could see on the screen? Because that bedrock seeds, which you could see on the previous slides, was the preposition for the invention of Velcro. Velcro, which everybody is using, right? You have it in your clothes, you have it in tents, and so on and so forth, right? And this invention was not like out of the blue. Guy was walking down the street and, oh, okay, let's do Velcro. No. He have observed the nature, and based on that nature, he learned that that's how these small seeds are connecting to your clothes by these small hooks. So I can make two pieces of material that will strip together, right? So he used observation of the nature. And how you can call that observation of the nature? That are these dots which I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, right? So he gathered a lot of different observations, and you put it together using a pen or some kind of methodology to create something completely new, to create something creative, right? So for the first thing, if you want to be a creative tester, if you want to be a creative developer, you have to gather a lot of these dots, like in the riddle at the beginning, right? A lot of these dots which connected together will create something completely new, something creative. So that was the first part of my workshop, and the first part where I share with you what is creativity. And now let's go to the second part, where again, please go to Slido, and I will create a next poll for the Slido. What do you think? What are exploratory tests? So what, when you think about exploration, when you think about testing in exploratory way, what do you think about it, right? So please again vote on the cloud, on the Slido, so we could see what are your opinions. What do you think? What are the exploratory tests? So when you think about exploration. Anybody? Don't be shy. I'm waiting here. So, okay, usually the things that are connected with exploratory session, when people answer, they say that it's the freedom, it's lack of specification, it's lack of test cases. So in exploratory tests, that's the things that are usually loosely connected or loosely bring up to the mind when you think about exploratory tests. But I would say that this is not necessarily true, because the official definition, at least the one I like to use about exploratory tests, is that it's simultaneously learning, test design, and test execution. That's like one of the first definitions that was invented for exploratory tests. And if you look carefully into that definition, then actually you will find all parts of the testing that you can also find in the, for example, ISTQB, right? Where you before you're executing test cases, you have to create them, you have to design them, you have to write them, and so on and so on. And exploratory tests, even if you're not using the test specification, you are using the specification. Just the test specification is in your head, and you're creating it instantly. So you're given the application. You see people say, okay, please test this application using that and that scope, or looking for that and that thing. And it's not like you're randomly clicking on the app, right? Test exploration or exploratory testing is not random clicking on the application. You are designing tests, you are making the specification for the test, you're just doing it seconds before you click in the application, right? You are doing that mental exercise, right? And that's why I prefer also the second definition, which emphasize a little bit the parts of the exploratory process. Because first part of the exploratory tests, when you test without a specification or without a test set predefined by somebody else before the test execution, you have the personal freedom and the responsibility, right? So you as a tester are responsible for figuring out what to test, figuring out for how long I will test, how deeply I will go into the feature that I'm testing right now, right? At the same time, do you remember about creativity and value? The same goes here, right? In exploratory tests, you have to optimize constantly, continually optimize the value of your work. So you're not randomly clicking over the application, testing 10 times the same feature. So you're not only making test cases in your head, but you're also prioritizing your work in your head, right? Not necessarily on paper. You can do it on paper, obviously, but you're optimizing your work during the execution. And the second part of that definition is exactly the same as the previous one. So you're learning during that process, your test design, your test execution. So you're experiencing the application, and based on that experience, you're testing even deeper the application. And that's actually one of the reasons why I on the chat wrote that you cannot automate testing. You cannot automate testing. You can automate checking. So checking if the button is blue, if the report is giving you right answers, but you cannot automate testing, because that's exactly what testing is, right? So you're looking at the application using your human eyes and your human brain, you're experiencing something, and you're making a conscious decision, what I will do next. Should I click this button or should I click that button? Is this thing that I can see on the screen is the correct thing that I should want to see? Or I would expect, like to experience as a user something else. And that's something you cannot automate. That's something that must be done by a human being or very sophisticated AI. But I don't think that in the near future there will be so sophisticated AI that could automate testing. But let's get back on track, because with the great powers comes great responsibility. And still again, knowing the definition of exploratory testing, that it's a freedom for testers, that the testers are responsible for the results of that testing, that they do the documentation and everything, test design, everything instantly in their heads. There comes great responsibility, and to guide testers how to do it in a way that is somehow more structured and gives our results on which we can build the next sessions in the future, we decided to do it in a very structured way. And the way we structured our first exploratory sessions was, as I mentioned at the beginning, after this first initial workshop, when we have done some exercises on creativity, we have done some exercises on exploratory testing, thinking as a tester. I gave them some tools, different kind of tools, so different set of dots that you could use in your daily basis work. We had triggered the first few sessions. And the sessions, as I mentioned at the beginning, look like this. So first half an hour, we were learning completely new tool. And then for 2 hours, we were testing. We have created a testing charters, and testing charter is like a document in which you are documenting things that you are doing. So at the beginning of the testing, I'm using the tool which I learned a moment ago to generate testing ideas. I shared the testing ideas with a friend, with a whole group, and so on, because we were testing in the whole group, right? So there were like 11 people in one room, using their minds to brainstorm and to figure out different testing ideas. We shared these ideas together, and then for 2.5 hours, for 2 hours, we test and document our work, right? So afterwards, after the session, we had a clear information on what was tested, what we didn't test it on that session, and also as an input for the next session, we could take the charter from the previous session, because we have some findings, we have learned something, we have documented that, and on the next session, we can start from this point, right? We can start from asking ourselves a question, what was tested previously, what testing ideas we missed, and maybe they are valuable for us, so we should execute them on this session. Or maybe we could come up with the testing idea, different testing ideas, right? So that was the first session. Then was a next session and next session and next session, and we started repeating that. And thanks to that, we started firstly building a toolbox for ourselves, because on each session, every tester were learning and teaching us, all people in the room, about new testing framework or testing tool that he have learned, right? So at the beginning it was mainly me, but later on different testers in the team, I have read some blog posts, I have read some great book, I have heard about testing personas, for example, framework, or I have heard about exploratory testing tools, or maybe a variable testing, or any other functionality, and we started to building a toolbox. So all of us, thanks to that, learn different tools for testing, which later on we could use in our daily work, right? Because we gain more and more experience, and this ended up in quite a few testing ideas, not testing ideas, testing frameworks, which I would like to share with you. And the fun part about this is that actually some of them were invented by my team. The first one is breaking news, a testing tool in which we figure out the ideas for. So we wake up in the morning and we think, we read the newspaper, and in the newspaper there's breaking news. This and this company is broke because of. And here we put the answers because of what the company is broke, right? Figuring out on what parts of the system should be tested, what are the riskiest ones, right? Then there were tool-based testing, which was inspired by exploratory software testing by James Whittaker, a great book. But actually the content of the whole book can be summed up in one blog post, which we have done it, right? So we have read the blog post, and based on that we have prepared a testing session. There was the CSI testing, and of that part I'm really proud of, because actually the girl on the picture, Elżbieta, was the one that have figured it out, right? So she have invented her own testing framework, her testing for how to test in the organization, right? And she taught us how to use it, and we used it on one of the sessions. There was also a testing personas. So there wasn't like a one source for what testing personas are. So one of the testers in my team have read different blog posts, and based on that, he have developed his own testing personas for our organization, right? How agile is this, right? You take the empirical experience from your organization and you implement it in a new way, new creative way for your organization, right? So you're not testing, you're not taking some bullshit tool from the market, you're inventing your own tool for your own testing purposes. Also additional very inspiring thing was testing variables. So yet again, this is not like a thing that you can find on the internet. This testing variables was inspired by Test It, another great book for testers, but it was invented for our own needs, right? So it was reinvented for our own needs, and we created something new because we had a big set of the dots. So different resources from different sources, which we have read on the internet, which we have learned ourselves during this exploratory session. And we had a framework to put it together, right? So all the rules which I mentioned to you, that we book 2.5 hours every 2 weeks in our calendar. We have like a procedure on how the session looks like. First, we learn the new tool, then we divide to the teams. Then we start testing, and at the end we have debriefing, right? So we debrief the information that we have learned during the session, right? So we had both. We had set of the dots and the pen which connected the different dots on our map. And that's basically it, as it goes for the meaty content of the of my talk. At the end, I would like to only underline that the most valuable resource you bring to your work and to your firm is your creativity. And I truly believe in that, because any tool, like when you look on your CV, and on the CV there is, I'm expert of Excel, I'm expert of Word. That's great, but you could learn that here, right? You could come to us and you can learn Excel in, a week or something. You can start learning Python, and of course, at the beginning, you will be a junior Python developer, but after some time, you will gain experience at that. But there is one thing that cannot be learned as easily, and it's the creativity, which bases on your life experience. So the more things that you have experienced, the more things that you can connect together. And even the idea for the workshop which I'm giving based on that topic, part of that idea comes from my studies. I started studying management some time ago, and on my studies I had a creativity classes from which I took the idea about how to be creative, how to be more creative, and how to be creative as a tester. Part of my workshop comes from the conference Eurostar, on which I went as a participant, and I was there on a workshop on testing, on experiential testing, and so on and so forth, right? And part of it was from my own work. So I had a broad set of dots coming from different directions, which then I connected into one workshop, which right now is scaling in my organization, because I started it as an experiment for my team. month ago, I was learning a different team in my organization how to use it, and the second team is starting using this framework for testing in sessions in every 2 weeks, right? And this is something which my organization right now is adapting. And also my workshop was implemented in other companies to which I provided a workshops. So guys, at the end, as I promised, here is the thing that you could see on my first slide. Actually, when you connected the dots, you could see the penguins. Fun fact, when I was giving this workshop in my organization, one of the girls have print screened the first slide, and before I went to the last slide, she connected the dots in the pint and then posted that in the chat. So that was actually hilarious for me, how she was intrigued by the first picture that she had to take a print screen and then connect the dots by herself. So you don't have to do it, because here is the picture. And that's basically it from me. I would like to thank you for the time you have spent. As I can see, I still have some more time for the questions. That's great. You can always, before I jump to the questions, you can always find me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. You can send me emails. And I encourage you to join my meetup. Even this week, I have a meetup with really great guests from around the world that are experts in testing. And actually, this meetup will be about DevOps. So I think you guys might be interested in it. So join my meetup, join me on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm really open to any connections and to helping you guys be better testers, or also how to trim up your processes so they are more lean and agile. So thank you guys, and I'm giving my voice to the studio.